Hello, everyone. Spirit House here. This is really special for me because this is my testimony. It may be boring and long, but I'm going to say it because I need to give props to those who deserve props in this. And that is God, my spirit family, my ascended masters, my angels, my galactic allies, my ancestors, universal love here. But mainly God and Jesus. Um, I started out as a child that was very different. I was the youngest of four children. My other three siblings were adopted by my father, so I was the only child from my parents. My dad was about 9 years older than my mother, I believe. But at any rate, from the time I was very young, maybe 3 years old, I connected to spirit. Um, I didn't know it was spirit at the time, but I knew I had a protector. And I used to be very spiritual. I used to like to, I've always liked to spend copious amounts of time alone. When my mother would throw a birthday party for me, I would have her hide my books so that other kids didn't rip them up, especially my pop-up books, and at a very young age, and I would go hide in her closet with a flashlight and look at my books while other kids were tearing things apart in the house. I didn't like to be around other kids. From the time I was about 5, I grew up in Alaska, and I was very fortunate. I realize now I was so fortunate because there wasn't a whole lot of crime back then. And people didn't lock their door, have to lock their doors all the time. And we'd go to our cabins. There were 2 cabins that were in my family. And my mom was a single mom. She worked very hard. To, well, she wasn't single at that point. Okay. So I'll back up a little bit, but, but they were both hardworking. My parents were. So, and my grandparents lived a block away, and I was so close. My grandfather was my best friend. I loved my grandmother. We were very close, so I would walk over there after school every day while people work, till they got home from work. I spent so much time with my grandparents, and I was so fortunate for that. But when we go to the cabin out in the woods in Alaska, my grandparents did not, and even my parents, it was just different back then because of where we lived and everything. I had a lot of freedom as a child to like explore in the woods and go ride on my bike down to the inlet. We lived in a place called Earthquake Park, and just riding my bike, exploring out by myself with nature. And when we go to a specific cabin that was on a lake called Anna Lake in Alaska, we it was about 2.5 hours out from Anchorage, but a lot of that was because the road wasn't graded. About half the time was riding in on an ungraded road that we drag a great big I-beam behind the truck, to try to, smooth it out over time. But we went fishing. My grandfather and I went fishing a lot at this cabin. There were rainbow trout in the lake. He built eventually. He bought a three-wheeler called a Honda, a Honda Big Red, and which was basically became mine, and built a little trailer to go behind it out of wood, where we take our fishing gear and go down to the lake. But and I used to ride that three-wheeler everywhere. I mean, miles around, to check on our neighboring neighbor's property, who was a friend of my grandfather's, who bought the property from my grandfather. And I would check on his cabin on my three-wheeler, for my grandfather while we were at the cabin, when he was away. But at any rate, I would go out into the woods and spend hours, and I'd come back, as long as I came back for lunch and came back for dinner, I could spend that whole time by myself out in the woods. And they tied a bell to me until I was old enough to learn how to shoot, and that was at 7 years old. That was a thing because we had a lot of cabins. I actually had 3 cabins. One of them was at another place called Colorado Lake, which was right on the edge of Denali National Park. and there were a lot of grizzlies there. So you just had to, when you went hiking alone, you carried a rifle. That was normal. But at any rate, they'd tie a bell to me and let me go just roam, just run amok in the woods, right? So I would do that, but I would come across places, certain places that I felt this primordial, and this is like at the age of 5, okay, 5 and 6, 5, 6, and 7, pretty much. I would say before I realized that became jaded, but I would like be out in the woods and I'd be exploring and I'd come across some primordial evil feeling and I would pray. I would pray, I would pray. And I'd say, please protect me, or if I felt like or saw a grizzly or something coming up, I would just pray and pray. And Archangel Michael, I didn't realize it was him at the time, but would come take my hand, surround me with white light or brightish yellow white light and take my hand and I would literally be floating in a bubble and he would lead me back to my cabin or back to my and this happened all the time and I thought it was normal for everyone. I thought this was just something that happened to everyone. But from the age of 5 on, I felt like I was an alien, or I felt like everyone else was an alien because I didn't really relate to people in the right way, the way that I observed everyone else relating to people. So, I thought everyone else is an alien. And I would have these nightmares about my family coming into my bedroom and peeling off a mask. And they had these like faces like sea monkeys. Do you remember sea monkeys? But anyway, um, yeah, so I thought for a long time, for about a year, everyone was aliens and they were observing me. I was like some kind of experiment. They were taking notes and observing me when I was 5. And I realized now that was my intuition. But then I realized by the time I was 6 that, wait a minute, I must be the alien because everyone else, I mean, why would I be put in a whole world? You know what I mean? I realized that logic, I thought about it enough. So by the time I was 6, I realized that I was not like everybody else. And that was made clear by the way people reacted to me. And, I wasn't a social person. I loved spending time alone. I wasn't unhappy. I would make up my own games. I would read. I would do things. And I just was happy, I was very happy. And my parents, so, you know, my dad left it when I was 7, and I didn't really, because he was gone all the time anyway. It didn't seem like a big deal to me. But jumping forward, I think that when I first realized that there was spiritual warfare being done on me, it was being done on me when I was younger. That was that feeling I got when I was really little at 5. But I didn't realize that's what it was until I was probably 14 years old. And then I started getting these feelings like I was having a heart attack. I would get this horrible pain behind my back, and it felt like I was going to die. And I'd start getting these cold sweats, and it would be just randomly, I'd be in the car with my mother. And I felt like I was going to die. And the only thing that helped was drinking lots of water, and praying. And as time went on, I lost my faith. Things kept happening. My whole life was like one thing after another. Things just kept happening and happening. And like at 17, my stepfather tried to kill me, tried to strangle me. And I ran away because my mom left him, but I knew she was going to go back to them because she had some addictions and things. So I just knew what the future was going to hold. So I started planning on how to get away. So I went to visit my family, my grandparents in Alaska for the summer. This is after we moved to Palo Alto, California. I went to go visit my family for the summer in Alaska, and my grandparents, and I planned to have my luggage on the way back taken off in Seattle because I'd spent 1 year in Seattle with my father when my mother sent me away when she married my stepfather. So I was sent away for a year because I was unruly. I had, or that's what the the thought was I really was a good kid. I wasn't unruly. I was pretty obedient, but I didn't like what I was seeing, and my way of rebelling against everything that was going on in my life was shaving my head, getting a black mohawk. and, that was my way of rebelling against conformity. So I didn't know exactly what I was doing, but I knew that I was angry, at that point in my life. But I wasn't really understanding why, and there were many reasons around me why, but that's another story. At any rate, I went to live there, and I made a connection with my best friend was a boy, and his family I became really close to, and we hung out all the time, and we remained in contact all those years until it was about 3 months before my 18th birthday, and I knew I had to leave because I knew my stepdad was going to try to kill me again. He was really mad that he didn't get away with it the first time, and I knew that was like an issue, and I knew my mother was going to go back to him. So I planned to have my luggage taken off on the way back on the return flight in Seattle, and I stayed with my friend and his family for quite a while there. But to fast forward from there, it's like everyone in my life who wasn't spiritual, the longer I was around them, agents of the devil would work through them. If they weren't spiritual, I would always they would end up becoming evil and attack me. I mean, in a bad way, trying to kill me. And I realized, after speed up the time till now, that throughout my life, agents of the devil have been trying anything and everything they can to end me. And anyone who I am around or live with who is not highly spiritual will eventually become evil and try to attack me if they don't have strong faith, because they're easy walk-in spirits. So this is something I've realized as a chosen one. I did not know I was chosen. I knew I was always spiritual, except for, I became jaded because of things that happened to me. And I became kind of a defeatist for a long time because I just felt like I must be cursed. But everybody, everyone would even say, God, Heather's had the worst life. She's had the worst luck, and it was like, I would swear I'm cursed. Somebody I don't even know, because I have done nothing in this life to create bad karma. So it has to be something, either I was a serial killer in a past life or someone's cursing me constantly. Okay, so that was the first indication. And in my marriage, who I was with this person for a long time. We had 2 children. They were both ended up being vaccine injured. A lot of things happened. I'm not sure if this person was paid to come into my life or not at this point. I kind of doubt that they were, but in the end they ended up being very evil, poisoning me. I was assaulted at our local store that I went to for years near my home, right around the corner. And I'd been going there for years. I knew the owners. I was assaulted. The owner, the store changed ownership the night before. And the clerk that was working was the son of the new owner. And I went in there one night to pick up some things. And this person, when I went to pay them, their eyes were like black. They were evil. I mean, all black. It was scary. I thought, this person's on either really high on LSD, they're on PCP or something really like, and just not of good intent. I knew instantly. I got that feeling. And this person actually jumped, and not even at a running jump, over the counter at me and assaulted me. And we struggled for a minute, and I got away because I know some martial arts, thankfully. And I ran into my van. I had a full-size van at the time because of my 2 kids, and I took their whole class on field trips and stuff. So I jumped in my van, and I shut the doors on his fingers. And then I opened it and shut it again. And I was backing out the whole time. And I went home, which was like literally 2 blocks away. And I tried to wake up. This was towards the end of our, well, this was the thing that ended it, was the final nail in the coffin of my marriage, but after 12 years. But I went and I was crying, and I woke up my husband, and I said, I was just assaulted. This person was trying to rape me, but he didn't get away with it. And I called the police, but they hadn't come yet. And I was waiting for them to come to file a report. And he was like, I'm sorry, I'm really tired. Okay, well, sorry, I'm really tired, and turned around. And so that was when I was like, what the hell? And then I realized later that I was being poisoned and all this other stuff. So. But, what my point is, the only person, there were so many times in my life. Another story that I'll share is I was in Nashville staying with some friends in Nashville, Tennessee. And I used to go there quite often because a lot of my friends were on the other side of the United States, or, in the surrounding states around Tennessee. And at the time I was doing a music festival. So I was running and organizing everything, a music festival at the time. So I was staying at a friend's house, and it was the last day, and I was getting ready to go for load-in and sound check. And I was looking in the mirror in this vanity area that they had in their bathroom, right? And I'm looking at the mirror, and there's this gigantic, I'm talking like 2 foot by 2 foot. I don't know what the diameter would be, but it was a globe on the ceiling, and these are high vaulted ceilings, right? And I'm doing my mascara, and I look up, and I see this thing full of water. And it was raining. It was summer storms. It was over Memorial Day weekend at the time. Summer storms in Nashville, and it was thunder and lightning, and it was raining, and this was the top floor of this, and it was a very high vaulted ceiling with this gigantic globe light, okay? And I look up, and I notice that it's 3/4 of the way filled with water. The light went out, and everything slowed down in ultra slow motion, and I saw this thing as I was doing my mascara. I looked up in the mirror, and I saw this thing up and above me starting to fall like it was in slow motion, and it would have landed on my head and killed me. I mean, there was a lot of water in this globe. So I dodged out of the way, and this thing flooded half of the apartment. Okay, it flooded the bath and toilet area, this huge vanity area, and half of the hallway and one of the bedrooms. Okay, that's how much water, And so it was like, my point is, there's so many times in my life where I should have been and would have been dead had it not been for God, had it not been for divine intervention, had it not been for my faith and my connection. Okay, so, I mean, at least 50 times any normal person would have been dead. I mean, at a point where I became disconnected with my faith, and it was the lowest point in my life. It was during the dark night of the soul that I was going through. I was going through a divorce with the said person that I was talking about, and I was very depressed already. I mean, I was ready to suck down my Colt Defender, that we had as home protection at the time. I was honestly thinking about that. The only thing that stopped me, that's how depressed I was, because I was being kept a prisoner in my own home at that point, and that's another story. But the only thing that kept me from that was I would not allow my children to find me, to be the ones to find me. So that saved me. And I got out of that situation, thankfully. But I was so depressed at the time, and I become sick before I left him. And then he accused me of faking it and trying to shirk my duties with the children who I'd been the only one who had ever done anything for them. And that was a lot. I mean, I raised them by myself. I was basically raised them like a single parent, but I was married to somebody. At any rate, so I was really depressed getting out of this, escaping the situation. I barely escaped this marriage. And I had been sick for over a year at that time, really sick. I'd been getting like meningitis symptoms, like I had already had a bad neck from 2 accidents, from being rear-ended 2 times. So I had a herniated disc. But on top of that, I started getting like encephalitis, swelling of the brain, meningitis symptoms, stiff neck, um, all these horrible things going on, like high fevers, being in a head fog, horrible stuff, horrible symptoms. So I went to a good friend of mine that's a doctor. I went to a couple of different people, and he didn't misdiagnose me, but he had to move away. But I was misdiagnosed twice, once with Lyme disease, which is basically horrid. I mean, if you've looked into Lyme disease, it's like syphilis, but not sexually transmitted. It's like you get bit by a tick, and the co-infections are worse than the actual Lyme disease, but the Lyme disease is bad. Basically, your brain is eaten away by worms or spirochetes, and eventually, and you go insane, and you die, and that's what it is. So first, I was diagnosed with Lyme's disease. Then they said no after we did a challenge, and I became immune to all antibiotics, or allergic to all antibiotics after that whole challenge they did with these horribly strong antibiotics. They ruled out the fact that I had Lyme's disease. So then I got a spinal tap, and they told me because I had myelin basic protein in my spinal column, which is your protective sheath of your brain that deteriorates and goes down into your spinal column, that I had MS, which is a blanket diagnosis anytime that happens. But the problem is with that practice in Western medicine is that there are a handful of other viruses that can affect you that will pass, that is not a life damning diagnosis like MS, but they don't test for those. It wouldn't cost anything for them to test for those, but the money that they can get from you injecting yourself with MS drugs every day, for till you die, which give you MS symptoms if you didn't already have MS, is a lot more than they can get from testing for other diseases like toxoplasmosis or myasthenia gravis. I mean, other things that are caused by vaccines. Okay, that's the truth. I'll just lay it out right there. There's a lot of that will happen. Your myelin basic protein will break down from your brain from a lot of vaccines or toxoplasmosis. Okay. But they won't test for that. They'll give you a lifetime death sentence with MS and put you on medication that if you don't have MS will give you MS symptoms. That is engineered to give you MS symptoms, make you go unconscious. So during this time, that's what I was going through. So when I got the MS, the second diagnosis, which was faulty, I never did have an MS. I was doing daily injectable medicine, and I should have known better because I was a holistic health coach and a master herbalist, but I was so sick at the time that I couldn't make decisions for myself. I couldn't think clearly. Okay, so long story short, this was a perfect opportunity for this family, these people, from throughout different parts of the world that have targeted me, but especially this family in Italy who has targeted me from birth. So it was the perfect time because I was low vibrational, I was sick, I was depressed, I was going through a horrid, horrid toxic divorce. I basically just wanted to die at that point in my life. It was horrible, but it was the perfect opportune time for them to do all they could because I'd lost my faith at that point, and I would have these amnesia episodes. This lasted 3 years. I would have these amnesia episodes where I would just lose consciousness or lose my motor skills and not be, all of a sudden I'd be walking along the river with my mom and my brother, and then all of a sudden I would lose the use of my legs all of a sudden, and my brother would have to carry me home. And basically they had walk-in spirits they were sending to me that were coming into my body, embodying my body, taking over my body for hours at a time, and I would have no recollection when I woke up what happened except for what my friends or my family said I did, which was crazy shit that I would never, ever do in my right mind. And the one of the strangest ones was I went up to Placerville to visit a friend of mine, which is north of here, a little bit northeast of here, and I talked to a tree in a different language, which was a constructed language, but nothing that anyone has ever heard before. And there were a lot of witnesses because it was a huge gathering at the end when I came to. But I was talking to an old ancient oak tree for 6 hours. And this was some kind of walk-in spirit, but it wasn't one that was bad. I mean, that one was one of the better ones, but I digress. So I didn't realize this was spiritual warfare till a lot later in my life, okay, until just a few years ago. But that's what it was. It was spiritual warfare. I didn't know that I had a purpose. I didn't know anything because my whole life, everyone around me had tried to keep me from finding this fact out, okay, from coming into my power, from believing in who I am, from making me think, because I'd had businesses when I was younger. I had business, my first business was when I was 19. I know how to make money. I know how to build businesses. I have good ideas. I know how to be independent. I've taken care of myself my whole life. Okay, so I knew something was wrong here, but all of a sudden, about 8 to 10 years ago, all of a sudden this halted, and I would start businesses and I would work day and night around the clock and from home, because I'd always done that. My mom was an entrepreneur who worked from home. My grandfather had a huge empire. So this is all that I had known. I just thought, you don't go to a job, you go start your own business. So, and I had been successful in the past. And all of a sudden, everything I did halted. It's like, and it was done to make me lose faith in myself and my ability of my, self-reliance. And this was all plotted against me. I mean, every area of my life was blocked. And I had no clue for a lot of years until recently. But, I started, my awakening started about 7 years ago when I was coming out of this illness by the grace of God. That was the worst thing. I was told by the doctor I was dying for 2 years. I had written my advance directive. I had planned, I was just planning to die. That was all I had to look forward to. I didn't want to make any plans because I was going to die. Because I thought I had MS, and the medicine I was taking made it worse when I didn't really have MS. It was a passing virus, but that I would have overcome on my own. But they put me on this medicine and this daily injectable stuff that was evil from Teva Pharmaceuticals, I might say. I've gone up against pharmaceutical companies my whole life. I don't care. Okay, they're out. They fucked all their employees over and laid them off, and I think they're out of business now. I should have filed a class action suit, but I didn't at the time because I was discouraged by the karmics around me not to file a class action suit. I would never win. But anyway, I digress again. I did come out of that, and the only reason was God. I did die for about 8 minutes at the very end of this cycle. I died for about 8 minutes. I had sleep paralysis because there was a monitoring spirit that had been hovering, waiting to take me for a few years. I saw it everywhere. But they took me, and the minute I died, I was afraid of this thing. I thought it was like a demon or something for years. But when I actually died, became paralyzed, and I couldn't, it would start at my feet and come up to my lungs, and then I couldn't yell out for help because my diaphragm was paralyzed and my throat was paralyzed and everything. And I'd be sleeping. It was sleep paralysis, the hag, the monitoring spirits people send to you. I didn't know it. I didn't recognize it as this at that time because I was so sick. But this thing, I realized that the minute that I died, that it wasn't anything to fear. And we had an understanding psychically. There was no words spoken, but this smoke-like thing that would hover over me in bed all the time. I realized it was just, that's how many times I came close to dying during those 3 years. Every time it came and hovered over me and I wake up and see it, it just was there waiting to do its job. It wasn't bad or good. It was just being sent by somebody. And I knew that I had authority over this. So long story short, I had an astral projection. And I went and I was flying through the ethers with this thing. It was like holding me kind of like a bird would under somebody's arms. And I was flying through the ethers. And I remember looking at it and realizing it wasn't what it was, that I was scared for nothing this whole time. And I realized my importance, and I was looking at myself thinking, I need to get used to seeing myself without a body because this is all wrong now. Why am I seeing myself in material form? And that's basically, there was no bright light and all this stuff people talk about. I was looking at myself, analyzing the situation. And I looked up at it, and it understood, and it nodded its head, and it let me go, and I came back. And that was the beginning of my spiritual, and after that, the amnesia episodes stopped. I quit the medicine, and my reconnection, my strong reconnection with spirit began, with God and spirit and my ancestors, my ascended masters, and my angels. And it's just strengthened since then. I just wanted to tell this story. I'll go into my twin flame journey later on. I don't feel like even giving it attention right now, but I want to tell this story for people, because, an incurable disease or some kind of diagnosis like that can be like a death sentence to someone psychologically. But if you don't accept it, it doesn't have to happen. And I will hope this is an inspiration to people, because if you have that will and that fight in you, and you have the faith, and you don't have any doubts, you just hand everything over. And that was the hardest thing for me in my journey, I'll be honest, was giving control over to God, and releasing and letting go and giving it all over, and trusting, placing all of your trust into spirit and your spirit family. That was my hardest obstacle, because, I was stuck in the 3D and but it's been the best thing I've ever done in my life. And you'll be so happy if you're able to come to that point to yourself. And it's just a message that I love you guys, and I don't want you to give up. I don't want you to ever give up, because there's always hope. No matter how dark and bad things seem, there's always hope. There's always hope. So don't give up, because I love you guys, and I know that you can do it. I know you have the strength. You can find the strength within you. Don't ever, ever give up, or let someone like a doctor or anybody outside of you and God and your spirit family tell you what's going to happen to your life, because it's not true. It's not true. So don't accept that. Don't give them that power. Don't give anyone that power. And I love you all, and I'll talk to you in the next video.